Hello, Prof. Kabir. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Can we start
Okay,
now, sir?
sure, we can start.
Okay, sir. Let me open this class first, sir. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. This is an second International Summer School Accounting and Finance with our speaker, Professor Dr. Muhammad Kabir Hasan. Before we start, I would like to remind you to open your camera and mute your audio. Also, I would like to inform you that you should rename your name to your full name since it will be used in the certificate. If everyone is ready to start, I will open this session. The Honorable Professor Dr. Muhammad Kabir Hasan as the lecturer for today's event. The Honorable Ms. Fitri Wahyuni, SEMSC, as the Head of International Program of Accounting, Universitas Muhammadiyah Yogyakarta. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asrofil anbiya wa mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in amma ba'du. Praise to the presence of God Almighty, who still gives his guidance and mercy to all of us so that we can attend this summer school in a good health. Blessings and greetings let us always devote to our Lord, the Prophet Muhammad, who had brought us from the time of Jahiliyah, heading into the era that is full of inayah as today. The topic of today's class is the nature and the role of Islamic commercial and social finance, which will be delivered by our speaker, Professor Dr. Muhammad Kabir Hasan. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Nabila Safitri as the Master of Ceremony. Here, I would like to show you the agenda we have arranged today. The first agenda is opening. The second agenda is introducing our speaker. The third agenda is lecture session. The fourth agenda is question and answer session. And the next agenda is photo session. And the last agenda is closing. Let us start the first agenda that is opening by reciting Basmalah together. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Then the next agenda is introducing our speaker. Our speaker is Professor Dr. Muhammad Kabir Hasan. He is Professor of Finance in the Department of Economics and Finance in the University of New Orleans. He is currently holds the 3 endowed chairs Hibernia Professor of Economics and Finance, Hancock Whitney Chair Professor in Business, and Bank One Professor in Business in the University of New Orleans. Professor Kabir Hasan is the winner of the 2016 Islamic Development Bank Prize in Islamic Banking and Finance. Professor Hasan received his BA in Economics and Mathematics from Gustavus Adolphus College, Minnesota, USA, and his Magister in Economics and PhD in Finance from the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, USA, respectively. Now let's move on to the next agenda. The next agenda is class session in the subject of Islamic banking, accounting, and governance with the topic the nature and the role of Islamic commercial and social finance, and will be delivered by Professor Dr. Muhammad Kabir Hasan. For Professor Dr. Muhammad Kabir Hasan, time is yours.
Thank you, Nabila. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I want to thank the organizer of the summer school of University Muhammadiyah Yogyakarta and also the participants who have registered for this class. So what I'm going to do basically follow my presentation slides so that I can communicate with you. And towards the end, I will take question and I will try to answer them. So I assume those who are taking this class, you have a basic understanding of Islamic economics, banking, and finance. So of course, this root is Sharia. The Quran, Sunnah is Qiyas. All these things are coming from this basic root. So when we talk about Islamic economic system, there is Islamic economy, there is Islamic financial system, but within the Islamic financial system, there is something called Islamic commercial finance. Example could be banking, stock market, and so on. And Islamic social finance could be zakat, awqaf, Qardul Hasan, Sadaqah, those type of activities. Now, can Islamic commercial finance and Islamic social finance work together and can provide a helping hand? So before we go further into these things, what is the meaning of Islamic social finance? Islamic social finance is a branch of Islamic finance that offers products and services for not-for-profit sector, or we call this a third sector. And the objective of Islamic social finance is to achieve social justice by a redistribution of wealth. And the Islamic social finance has been dubbed as Islamic social safety nets, and this is also considered a charitable sector. Now, from the maqasid or objective of Sharia or Islamic law perspective, it is mandatory for one to help each other in protecting one another from hardship, as one can achieve success in this world and the hereafter. And the social finance is an approach to managing investment that generate financial returns while including measurable positive social and environmental impact. So that is a basic definition I'll start with. Now, can Islamic social finance, is it a recent development? You know, you have been hearing a lot of buzzword, community investing, microfinance, social investment bond, crowdfunding, CSR, corporate social responsibility, environmental social and governance, ESG, SRI, social responsible investment, VVI, that is popular in next door neighbor, Malaysia, that's called value-based intermediation, SDG, which is a new word that has been started by United Nations, Sustainable Development Goals. We hear the word sustainability, we hear the word social returns, we hear the word social capital, social entrepreneurship, moral values, being a human, circular economy, and of course, charitable banking. So these are all lumped together that is already subsumed in the concept of Islamic social finance. Now, when we talk about the social economy and the social economy organization, this is not only in Islam, it's in other faith tradition and other countries exist as well. So terms such as social economy, solidarity economy, and the third sector are often used interchangeably. In Latin America, the term solidarity economy is more commonly used, but in Anglo-Saxon countries, for example, the country that I live in, United Kingdom and United States, refer to it as the third sector, while in continental Europe, the commonly used term is called social economy. So the social economy refers to economic activities that, in terms of ownership or goals, cannot be attributed clearly to the public or private sector. The general goal of social economy organization is to balance the satisfaction of social and economic needs. The definition of the social economy adopted at the International Labour Organization Conference, the social economy, Africa's response to the global crisis, acknowledges a range of institutional types that make up the social economy. For example, enterprises and organizations, in particular cooperatives, mutual benefit societies, associations, foundations, and social enterprises, which have the specific feature of producing goods, services, and knowledge while pursuing both social and economic aims and fostering solidarity. A double bottom line is common to various organizations that make up the social economy. So, example of the social economy organization and supply of funds. If you take, for example, cooperatives, what are the cooperatives? These are voluntary and open membership. Every member has equal voting rights. Resolution carried by majority. Members contribute to the capital, which is variable. Autonomy and independence. Active players in the agriculture, manufacture, banking, retailing, and service sectors. If we talk about mutual societies, again, they're voluntary and open membership, equal voting rights, resolution carried by majority, members' fees based on insurance calculation are relevant, and there is no capital contribution. These are autonomous and independent. Activities include medical life and non-life insurance guarantee schemes and home mortgages. Then you have the associations or voluntary organizations. They are voluntary and open membership, again equal voting rights. There are members' fees, no capital contribution, autonomous and independent organization, service providers, voluntary work, sports and advocacy and representative, important providers of healthcare and other social services for children and seniors. Foundations, and in the Western we call foundation, in Islamic parlance, we talk about this called Waqf, is run by appointed trustees, financial resources generated primarily from donations and gifts. Activities include financing of research, supporting international, national, and local projects, providing grants to relieve the needs of individuals, and funding voluntary work. Then you have the social enterprises, no universally accepted definition, have the social and societal purpose combined with the entrepreneurial spirit of the private sector, reinvest the surplus to achieve a wider social and community objective, are they registered as private companies, cooperatives, associations, voluntary organizations, charities, or mutual societies. Some are unincorporated. So you also heard about this called social business, and the concept that has been popularized by the Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus, who happens to be from Bangladesh, where I was born myself. So these are some of the different types of organization that are example of SOEs, social economy organization. Now, in those, there is some important consideration that you have to keep in mind. The funding is a big issue. So funding could be debt financing or equity financing. If it is a grant, so there are disadvantages and advantages. There are membership, there are subsidies. So what are the disadvantages? So must pay back. I mean, if it's a grant or funding. So we talk about funding, debt financing, equity financing. So investor returns could be more than debt payments, could cause cash flow issues. Investor gets some ownership, usually need collateral, and must consult investor for decisions. You know, if you have taken a financial management class, the difference with the debt finance, equity financing also applies as a form of capital structure of these organizations. So here, when we talk about the social economy, we are focusing more on quasi-equity type of capital, usually loan where the repayments are in some way tied to the organization's success, and quasi-equity behaves like shares for organizations that don't have shares. So these are basically soft loan. When you even talk about debt financing, there's a subsidy given by government or other private entities. So the need to have Islamic social finance, can it be achieved via Maqasid al-Sharia? The answer is yes. Islamic commercial finance is inadequate to fulfill all segments of the population because banking usually caters to the people who have money. The Sharia contracts used and their objectives are different when it is used for not-for-profit purposes. Institutionalization of Islamic social finance is important to reach out to those who are in need of it. So what are some of the Islamic social finance instruments? So there is not an exhaustive list. So some people may debate whether zakat and waqf, these are instruments or institution. Let's put aside the debate right now. So you have the zakat, you have the sadaqah, you have the waqf, you have takaful, you have Qardul Hassan, you have Islamic microfinance, and of course, you have the green sukuk or socially responsible sukuk funds. So let's talk about these items one by one. First, zakat. So zakat is for the poor. It is coming from Surah Al-Tawbah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Zakat is for the poor and the needy and those who are employed to administer and collect it, and the new converts, and for those who are in bondage and in debt and service of the cause of Allah, and for the wayfarers, a duty ordained by Allah, and Allah is the all-knowing, the wise. So zakat is the third pillar of Islam, and as such, it is a form of worship act that is compulsory upon those who are eligible to pay it, which shall be distributed to 8 recipients stated in the Quran. The administration of zakat in different parts of the world is different. Some countries have centralized system of collection, while other countries have a decentralized system of collection of zakat. Indonesia, I would say, has set up a model system which other countries can follow. You have the zakat, you have the basnas, and the central government of Indonesia is very much active into this process. It is estimated by the Islamic Development Bank about 5 years ago that each year zakat is given between 230 to 560 billion worldwide. It's a huge amount of money. For instance, the Zakat Administration Body of Indonesia, which is called Basnas, states that the potential of zakat in Indonesia is valued at around 286 trillion rupiah per year, but the actual collection is only 9.5 trillion, or about roughly 577 million in 2019. And there has been more update of this estimate, how much it can be collected in Indonesia and distributed. And Basnas and Wal Zakat and Waqf Foundation in Indonesia is working very actively in this area. Zakat is viewed as a sustainable source of fund compared to other Islamic social funds, as zakat is compulsory every year and zakat needs to be collected and distributed. So what we have found in the zakat collection and distribution, there are issues with fund collection. So there has been reports of mismanagement, fraud, all those kind of things, because we are all human beings, right? So the shaitan is always behind us, giving us waswasa, trying to derail us. So all those problems arise because of this, and also the governance issue and so on. Fund management issues, once you get the money, how we are going to distribute and give this money to the people. There are people who have the dignity. They do not want to see that they're taking the zakat money. So you have to develop a system, the anonymity of the recipient and the payer of zakat can be, because many people don't want to say that I'm paying zakat. So because, there's hadith, if you give something with the left hand, the right hand doesn't know anything about it. So all these issues has been tackled, addressed, and also a lot of research work is going in this area. And fortunately, the IT, information technology, AI, and the blockchain, all sorts of modern technology are being used in the zakat collection and zakat management. Second item is sadaqah. Sadaqah is a powerful tool that's used to fight against poverty, as it provides a mechanism to obtain funds, which is small or big amount, from those who are capable to those who need them. Prior to the pandemic, sadaqah is physically given by many, especially during the holy month of Ramadan, while going or coming from mosque or via mosque donation funds. Saleh, 1999, a paper observed that donors prefer to make their sadaqah directly to private individuals, poor families, or private charities. Again, this is a question of governance. If the trust factor can be shown that an organization when it collects sadaqah, it collects and distributes properly, people will give more money to an organization rather than doing it individually. This mechanism creates a win-win situation to the donor as well as recipient, as a person who gets the satisfaction of helping a person in need, while the recipient gets the opportunity to fulfill their basic necessities. This is what I'm talking about, individual person-to-person sadaqah giving. Now, what are the issues in sadaqah? How to increase supply? Again, it all depends on have the higher level of iman, more piety. The more pious a person becomes, the more he is or she is willing to give. How to reach out to those most deserved? I think mosques can be a powerful mechanism through which we can know really the people who are in the locality in most deserving or in need of money. How to have a good governance was implemented. There has been a lot of development happen in management literature. We can borrow this, we can take, case study, best practice example from other countries. What incentives could be provided? There are incentive order works. You can develop an incentive mechanism for the people who collects and distributes zakat. Waqf is the most powerful tool. Rahman Tony states that for long-term resilience against COVID-19 poverty, Waqf is an important tool. Actually, these 3 years of COVID has given us a laboratory through which we can see the effectiveness of different Islamic social finance tools. There are 2 types of Waqf, that is immovable land and movable cash Waqf. Immovable Waqf, the confinement of an asset by founder and the dedication of its usufruct in perpetuity to the beneficiaries or welfare of the society. The movable or cash Waqf, you're very familiar with, is very popular in many countries. The confinement of money or cash by founder and the dedication of its usufruct in perpetuity to the welfare of the society. For example, at the time of the Ottoman Empire, Waqf was a very successful source of financing for health sector, education sector, and welfare of the general public, and the revenue received from Waqf contribution was over 1/3 of the Ottoman state's total revenue. So what are some of the issues in Waqf? How we can be innovative in Waqf asset management. If you have an idle land sitting, you can make it more productive by converting this into, income earning properties. You can have a commercial building, or you can have an apartment complex. You can have other uses of this land, and the rate of return from that conversion will be much higher than the rate of return you receive simply sitting that land idle. How to boost confidence of those who are interested, that's very important. If a person wants to give charity or to Waqf, they want to make sure their money is being spent properly to the right people, distributed, and so on. There are legal challenges, of course. If you look at what happened when the West conquered the Muslim land, they wanted to destroy the financial muscle of the people. So they started destroying all different types of Waqf that existed in Muslim land, the Arab Peninsula, and Middle East and North Africa. So there are still the legal challenges we are facing in order to recover the Waqf land in different parts of the world. There are also the awareness. Many people don't know the bounties and benefit of having a Waqf. So you'll see in many parts of the Muslim world, there are religious Waqf which abound. But of course, we need religious Waqf, we need the mosque because people will pray. But we also need more Waqf into education, healthcare, child development, climate change, and so on. Now, of course, there are management issues. Fortunately, if you read the literature, the AOFI has come up with the governance literature. Even your country, I'm talking about Indonesia, has a Wakaf management governance role, very well studied, and I ask you to read those documents. Then we have the Takaful. Takaful insurance concept whereby a group of participants mutually guarantee each other against loss or damage. Each participant fulfills his obligation by contributing a certain amount of donation or tabaru into a fund which is managed by a third party, which is the takaful operator. The main reason for the emergence of takaful is due to the issues in conventional insurance, which is prohibited in Sharia, because in Islam, you can share risk, but you cannot sell risk. Commercial, conventional insurance, it sells risk, which is prohibited in Islam. Majority of the Sharia scholars believe that it is unlawful due to involvement of riba. I'm talking about conventional insurance, maisir, gambling type of nature, and gharar, the uncertainty. And the concept of takaful was invented or started in Sudan in 1979, which was developed by Professor Al-Sadiq Al-Darir, who is a prominent Sudanese Sharia scholar. Though the concept, including operational aspects of takaful, is different from conventional insurance, the objective of both conventional insurance and takaful is the same. Now, when you talk about takaful in the context of Islamic social finance, in Malaysia, for example, My Salam is a national health protection scheme initiative started by the government that aims to provide 8 million with free takaful protection to eligible individuals to help the poor and needed to overcome financial difficulties in the unexpected event of critical illness. And during this pandemic, Health Takaful Corporation provided 3.8 million Bantuan Sara, Hidap, and Bantuan Prehit Nasional who are currently insured under the scheme. You know, during COVID, this is unknown virus, the healthcare cost was very high, and the poor people are affected more than the rich people. And the Malaysian government has come up with this takaful scheme to help these poor people. Now, for example, Takaful and Karma scheme of Egypt is a scheme that provides social guarantee Egyptians living below the poverty line, and it has been extended to support during the pandemic. Then we have the concept of Qardul Hasan. So the debate that is right now going on, so is or are zakat and waqf institution or instrument? So many scholars, and I agree with that, zakat and waqf are actually social institutions. It is not a financial instrument. But Qardul Hasan, on the other hand, is a financial instrument. And in Quran, in many places, it has been verse after verse talked about Qardul Hasan. So let's go over a few of them. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Who is he that will loan to Allah a beautiful loan, which Allah will double unto his credit and multiply many times? It is Allah that giveth you want or plenty, and to him shall be you. Verily, those who give sadaqah, man and woman, and lend to Allah Qardul Hasan, it shall be increased manifold to their credit, and there shall be an honorable good reward. If you lend Allah Qardul Hasan, he will multiply it for you. Allah is the most appreciating and the most forbearing. So Qardul Hasan is a benevolent loan and gracious loan given to needy people for a specified period, and at the end of that period, the face value of the loan is to be paid off. And Qardul Hasan is a zero return loan that Al-Quran urges Muslims to make available to the needy. The borrower only needs to pay back the principal amount without any obligations for an additional amount, because if you pay additional amount, that goes to the definition of riba. And Qardul Hasan is urged in Islam not just because of uniqueness involvement of riba, but because it shows the spirit of cooperation and brotherhood, which will improve the welfare of the society. and microfinance institution use these as an instrument. So you probably heard about Akhwat. It's a microfinance institution based upon the concept of Qardul Hassan. So it offers 7 types of interest-free microfinance loans to those who prove that they deserve it. Like, for example, let's go over some of this type of loan. Family enterprise loan range between $100 and $300. And what is the purpose? To establish a business. Liberation loan, $500 maximum to get rid of loans with high interest rate. So you take this Qardul Hassan and pay off your interest-based loan so that you can get out of the paying interest and committing sin. But at the same time, it also gives you financial relief. You have the education loan, $250 max for educational dependence. I'm sure you have this type of scheme in Indonesia as well. You have the health loan, 100, 200 to bear the financial cost of healthcare. You have the emergency loan to bear losses in business, healthcare expense, machinery repairs, motor vehicle repair, veterinary expense, and admissions fee. Housing loan. You can also have a marriage loan. Many younger people cannot get married because they don't have enough. And this $200, they give marriage loan, marriage of daughters and sisters. And also you have housing loan, renovation houses, you have the silver loan, expansion of business. Eligible clients are only those who have completed 3 or more borrowing cycle upward. Now, Islamic microfinance, as I explained an example Akhwat, Islamic microfinance institutions differ modes of innovative financing are provided to needy and poor via charity modes and non-charity modes. At this pandemic, poor and needy can uplift themselves from poverty through Islamic microfinance institution. Even in conventional microfinance, some countries such as Cote Verde have started providing interest-free loan scheme to assist the needy and the poor in the pandemic. Now in Pakistan, for example, Akhwat and Dunya Foundation have launched the Akhwat Dunya interest-free emergency loan, via which they have already assisted more than 5,000 families. This is an old number. I'm sure this numbers, the family number probably is more thousands. Intending to reach out to more daily and monthly wagers who have been severely affected with the pandemic, and the objective of the scheme is to provide loan to buy food, medicine, to pay kids fee, home rent, and utilities bill. You can have the same concept applied to different natural calamities that very frequently afflict Indonesia. You have the tsunami, you have the earthquake, and you have the flood. So this type of microfinance can be used that way. Sukuk, AUFI defines Sukuk as follows: certificates of equal value representing undivided shares in ownership of tangible assets, used products and services, or in ownership the assets of particular object projects and special investment activity. Now, there are different history of Sukuk, who was the first Sukuk and so on. So many people say that first Sukuk actually was issued in Malaysia by Shell and DS, USD 33 million. It was based upon the principle by Bitmal Ajil. The AUFI Sharia standard described 14 different types of Sukuk as permissible. For instance, the government of Indonesia has issued retail Sukuk at inexpensive prices to support financial inclusion, and also planning to issue a Waqf-based Sukuk where development of Waqf is the underlying project, where the return from it will be used for development of microfinance. So what are the challenges and opportunities? So currently, the Islamic social finance, it is not merged with Islamic commercial finance. There's an opportunity to mingle these two, Islamic social finance and commercial finance. And there are different instruments, institutions of Islamic social finance that develop in an ad hoc manner, detached from one another. So there's an opportunity to institutionalize Islamic social finance with Islamic commercial finance. Lack of governance framework required for ISF, legal, regulatory, and Sharia governance framework required for Islamic social finance can be enacted and it could be developed in a systemic way. Remote use of technology. There is room to use technology to enhance Islamic social finance. Challenges in balancing demand and supply side. Effective policy tools need to be formulated and adopted to ensure Islamic social finance can mobilize enough funds to reach out to those in need, and investment avenues are required to sustainability. So there is also the potential of creating an Islamic social capital market. So there are some news items, proposed models for unit trust Waqf and the parameters for their application. It came out, ISRA, International Journal of Islamic Finance. There's a paper. Social Impact Sukuk for Migrants and Innovation Solution. There's a press release. Khazana issues the world's first ringgit-denominated sustainable and responsible investment sukuk. Waqf coin crowdfunding platform uses blockchain to serve humanity. Then Professor Magda Ismail of Malaysia, she came up with the Waqf shares new product to finance old Waqf properties. Then Ahsanullah Sasna, his Salihin Sharia Advisory, I Have a Dream, Waqf market in addition to Islamic banking, Takaful, and the Islamic capital market. Then you can have Waqf shares, a fundraising scheme for community development projects and humanitarian activities. So the potential of creating a Islamic social capital market, we can take an example for International Labour Organization, an example from Brazil. The Bolsa de Valores Society was launched in 2003 by Brazil Stock Exchange as a fundraising initiative. Since its launch, private donors have contributed more than 5.5 million to 71 not-for-profit organizations. The Brazilian Stock Exchange has created an environment where social economy organizations that need funds and social investors ready to support their projects can meet and exchange. Not-for-profit organizations send their projects, stating how much money they need to raise and the intended purpose. Therefore, a team of specialists analyzes the entries and recommends the best program or project to the Board of Governors of the Social Stock Exchange. Once approved by the board, Brazil Stock Exchange, as brokerage firms in the country, put forward the portfolio of projects to investors with the objective of selling the social shares of the selected organizations. Investors choose the listed organization that match their interests. Funds raised by the Brazilian Stock Exchange are transferred to the listed organization without deducting commissions or fees, and the stock exchange via the total cost, advertising, communication, and operation linked to offering these shares. Clearly, the Brazilian Stock Exchange demonstrates that there can be a true partnership between social capital market and mainstream financial market and social economy organizations. So when you talk about achieving Maqasid of Sharia by Islamic social finance, according to Al-Ghazali, Maqasid of Sharia are broadly discussed in 5 different categories. It is the protection and enrichment of faith. It is self, nafs, intellect, progeny, and property. So these are the 5 things you want to protect and preserve according to Maqasid of Sharia. Now, next, social finance, or the way the Malaysia is promoting this, is called value-based intermediation. So Malaysia came up with a value-based intermediation strategy paper in collaboration with founding members of the VBA community of practitioners comprising Bank Islam Malaysia, Bank Muamalat Malaysia, Agro Bank, CIMB Islamic Bank Berhad, and HSBC Amana Malaysia, and focuses on adoption of relevant practices, offerings, and conduct that generate positive and sustainable impact to the economy, community, and environment consistent with the shareholder sustainable returns and long-term interest. The approach Malaysia has implemented to adopt VBA strategies is that first, It is applicable to Islamic banking only though the strategies could be universally applied for the whole Islamic finance sector. The BBI strategies will practically be applied by the Islamic banks using a business-driven approach, while the respective Islamic banks adopt them as part the level of their maturity, and the consultative approach paves the way for effective collaboration between the stakeholders with mutual understanding. So underpinning the thrust of BBI, so you can see this diagram, you have the value-based intermediation, you have the best conduct, you have the good self-governance, you have the entrepreneurial mindset, and of course, with the objective of community empowerment. So there are 6 different strategies used by BBI. Strategy number 1, Islamic banking industry adopts BBI by minimizing negative impact and promoting a more holistic observation of Sharia and bound Sharia compliance. Second, the Islamic banking institution and the key stakeholders mutually define the underpinning thrust of BBI as a basis for collective action. Strategy 3, to show success stories of BBI as potential champions, regulators in collaboration with industry players must nurture them. Strategy 4, there should be proper disclosure made by Islamic banking institutions about their intention to adopt BBI supported with implementation strategy and performance report. Strategy number 5, a BBI scorecard need to be developed and introduced by regulator in the affiliation Islamic banking institutions as a common and complementary measurement of success for industry. Strategy 6, development of effective networking through establishment of a community of practitioners as well as strategic collaboration with the established value-based community. So these are the strategies that has been developed and followed by the banking industry first, and as I said, and these are gradually being implemented to other Islamic financial services sector. Now, you probably heard about the circular economy. So circular economy, actually, you combine society and environment economics in order to have a sustainable financing mechanism. So what is the social circular economy? The social circular economy combines the concept to deliver benefits for the people, profit, and planet. It allows a fully systemic view by drawing on the environmental principles of circular economy and the societal vision of social enterprise, both of which are underpinned by pursuit for economic prosperity. To articulate why social circular economy is needed, it is best to highlight the potential shortfalls from a whole system perspective that the circular economy and the social enterprise concepts can present when pursued in isolation. So, definition, a circular economy model advocates for moving away from the linear economy that promotes sustainable economy by promoting sustainability and reducing waste. So having said or giving you some brief background of different types of Islamic social finance instruments and institutions, let's talk about the law of zakat. This is the third pillar of Islam. So there are key issues in the application of law of zakat, or we call ijtihad in zakat. We really look into the modern parlance. You have to understand one thing: zakat is a transactional ibadah. It's one of the 5 fundamental pillars of Islam. But Allah said that you pay zakat. But how you pay zakat? There are 8 different categories that is determined by there's so many different issues that is coming from Sharia or the fiqh. We can do ijtihad to make it more adaptable to modern world. Because by doing this, we are preserving the main content or objective of zakat that has been enshrined in this Quran and Sunnah. We are not violating it, but we need to make them more effective. So number 1, we can talk of the exemption of limit of zakat, 1-year term, rates of zakat, condition of growth, zakat and income tax. You know, in Malaysia, if you pay zakat, you can subtract from your income tax. I think, I do not know whether it's an individual level they started, but it's definitely at the corporate level they allow it. Zakat on agricultural processes, disbursement, and incident zakah, is it progressive or not? So let's talk about these 10 items. So when you talk about the exemption limit of zakah, the scholars should focus on the question to resolve the issue of nisab, like once the limit of the nisab is defined, how do we levy zakah on the balance of wealth after deducting the nisab, or it is only a defining limit for status of the person, and once a person exceeds that limit, his or her entire income or wealth shall be taxed, or should we consider the nisab at the beginning or at the end or at both points in time? So these are some of the questions the mustahid or the Islamic legal scholar should really delve into and try to find a modern interpretation of those ideas. Second one-year term. The important accounting implication is that once a person pays zakah, they do not pay it again on the same wealth in the same year. While applying this principle across the board on the entire population, the zakah collecting authority has to define zakah year and cut-off dates for determining the zakah liability of every person. Therefore, scholars should try to focus on this issue and answer questions like, what happens when you take account of any increase in the cash balance due to temporary deposits, loans, or trust funds? So this is a question I'm raised as an example. So the scholar should really delve more into this one-year term. Number 3, rates of zakah. As you have already mentioned, the different rates of zakah in different systems create inconsistencies. Like, when you have cows, how many cows, and who have this agriculture producer, the different roles. So scholars should really focus on introducing a generalized formula for the rates of zakah. Number 4, conditions of growth. The orthodox scholars consider growth as a necessary condition, and because of that exclude fixed assets from the application of zakah. However, renowned scholars like Kaf and Abu Saud consider the condition of growth is ill-founded and superfluous. Number 5, zakat and income tax. The Muslims are obliged to pay zakah. Some of them feel that they're subject to dual taxation with the same income and wealth because they also have to pay income tax as the citizens of the state. Thus, scholars think that the income tax should allow every taxpayer to declare the amount of tax to be adjusted against the zakah liability. So that means you pay zakah, which is mandatory, and you adjust that with the income tax. Number 6, zakah on agricultural process. The agriculture produce is subject to zakah by consensus if the production is over and above the nisab. However, there is some difference of opinion about whether the zakah is payable in gross or in the net value of the produce. Thus, Muslim scholars should resolve this issue. Number 7, disbursement of zakah. The Quran has prescribed 8 broad categories of people who are entitled to receive the zakah funds. But a relevant question for the present age is about spending proceeds with zakah on development projects for the welfare of the common man. So the Muslim scholars should consider this issue and resolve it. Number 8, incidence of zakah, progressive or not. The concept of progressive taxation is a latter-day development in public finance, and is it in line with the egalitarian stance of Islam? However, the orthodox interpretation does not reconcile with the egalitarian nature of Islam. The problem arises from the belief that the rates of zakat are immutable and cannot be changed. So there has to be more istihad on this issue so that zakat actually become progressive, not regressive, means the poor people paying more zakat, relatively less wealthy people paying more zakat than the wealthy people. So the poverty alleviation and the problems using the Islamic social finance and also the commercial finance. So from the Islamic perspective, poverty in Islam, Fakir, plural, Fukara, can be divided in spiritual poverty and material poverty. The spiritual poverty means that all humans are in the need to Allah in all of their affairs. Material poverty is an inability to sustain humanly life in the world. Material poverty is sunnatullah, that the laws of Allah, and cannot be totally eradicated. But the most important issue is that rich people have to care about poor people to help fulfilling their basic needs, while poor people do not have jealous feeling toward the rich people. So again, the poverty in Islam is a state whereby individuals could not fulfill one or more of the maqasid of Sharia to promote the well-being of the people, or have the 5 basic requirements, namely deen, nafs, aql, nasl, and mal, the same way Imam Ghazali mentioned that I discussed in previous slides. There is a harmonious relationship and the reduction of gap between the poor and the rich, so that just and distributed well-being in the whole society could be achieved. Poor people do not obliged to pay zakah. Conversely, they are eligible to receive zakah to be able to sustain humanly the worldly life. And poverty alleviation and inequality reduction have been embedded in Islam and Islamic economics through many different means. So Sadegh described poverty eradication scheme in Islam. He stated the Islamic approach to poverty alleviation comprised of 3 sets of measures, namely positive measures, including income, growth, functional distribution of income, and equal opportunity; preventive measures, including control, ownership, and prevention of malpractice; and third, corrective measures, including compulsory transfer through zakat, recommended transfer through charity, and the state responsibility. So here, the same thing in a diagram. So as you see, poverty alleviation scheme in Islam, positive measures, so that the government, the economy has to develop so that the income grows, economy grows, the growth rate is positive. And there has to be functional distribution of income so that the income is not concentrated only to the few people. Everyone should have equal opportunity. After you do the positive measure, there has to be preventive measures. So the control of ownership, so ownership should be distributed so that the wider people have control of the national wealth, not only few families. And there has to be prevention of malpractice and corruption. So after you do positive and preventive, there has to be, it should be a remedial measure, not a positive third or remedial measure. So you have the compulsory transfer, zakat is part of the Islamic faith. Then you have recommended charity, and still, even after do all these things, the state has to take care of this, the needy and have not. So the third set of anti-poverty measures, the corrective measures, fosters wealth transfers so that wealth is not concentrated among the wealth through compulsory transfer, zakat, recommended transfer by charity, and state responsibility over enforcement and basic needs. Now, I have a paper that I published many years ago. We can combine the Islamic commercial and social finance. Islamic finance comprises Islamic commercial finance, as I said before the beginning, and Islamic social finance, which are combined integrate to form an integrated Islamic commercial and social finance. The idea to return to IACSP has been applied in Bangladesh by Professor Mannan with the Social Islamic Bank Limited, while IICF has also been applied in Indonesia by Islamic Microfinance Institution, generally called Baitul Mal wal Tamwil or BMT, registered as an Islamic cooperative combining Islamic social finance in its Baitul Mal division and Islamic commercial finance in its Baitul Tamwil division. Now, the Baitul Mal division manages Islamic social funds, especially zakat, infaq, and waqf, while the Baitul Tamwil division is managed as a commercial Islamic microfinance institution collecting deposits from its members for initial capital, principals, and compulsory deposits, savings deposits, and time deposits. Baitul Tamwil could find external funds such as an apex institution, a secondary financial institution which provides liquidity for microfinance institutions, Islamic banks, or the foreign resources. Subsequently, Baitul Tamwil can extend financing to its member customers, mainly for productive purposes using various equity-based and debt-based modes of financing. So Baitul Tamwil could provide non-commercial financing, such as Qardul Hasan, for the emergency purposes to those in need. And Baitul Tamwil also offers various Islamic microfinance services, such as micro takaful, fund transfers, bill payments, ATM services, mobile banking, and internet banking. The integration of Islamic commercial and social finance under one roof brings distinct benefits to stakeholders and solves some common problems of Islamic financial institutions. So, having said and giving you a sort of preliminary basic understanding of Islamic social finance, let me now turn to some research work that me and my team has done on different Islamic social finance institutions and instruments. So we talk about zakat, what research has been done, waqf, takaful, and Islamic microfinance. But in all those work or the literature review, we follow a common theme. It's called bibliometric study. The social and faith-based financing, such as Islamic social finance, is an important additional source of financing, and it can help in reduce severity of economic inequality resulted from biased distribution of resources and wealth, flattening the curves through economic turmoils, protect weak and vulnerable segments of the society, long-term improvements aiming for poverty alleviation. So what we do, our contribution from the academic standpoint, academicians have contributed largely to these topics after the 2008 crisis. So you know there was a financial crisis 2008 and 9. Then you had the COVID crisis 2020 and 22. Now, the academicians' effort in this field are lacking to systemic synthesis literature to ease of the interested stakeholders. We carried this project of 3 papers in Zakah, Waqf, and Islamic microfinance to summarize what has been done in this area. If you see the picture, so the research in this area has been exponentially growing after the 2008 and 9 financial crisis. In Islamic microfinance, Zakat literature 2000 is going exponentially. You see, if you see, the curve is moving very steep high, and Waqf literature is also moving very steadily. So what we did in these 3 papers, we provide a purpose analysis of the literature, productivity citation. We provide content analysis through various clustering techniques. We provide future research directions based on the literature gap. In all these papers, we adopt, as I said before, the bibliometric method. Bibliometrics is the use of statistical methods to analyze books, articles, and other publications. Bibliometric is special because it produces accurate and reproducible research outcomes. It's non-biased. It eliminates the risk of subjective bias since it employs statistical analysis to analyze large amount of databases. And of course, it combines quantitative aspect with qualitative aspect. Now, in our studies, we choose the Scopus database as it is the largest multidisciplinary academic source and intersect with WS in most of its content. And Scopus database presents moderate number of articles comparing with Web of Science, which is less relevant articles, and Google Scholar, which is large amount of articles. So these are the steps that we talk about, the steps of data collection, choosing all related keywords, spelling for Waqf, Islamic social finance, We manually refine the data through one by one, cursor examination each article or review relevancy of the topic. And in this process for the Waqf, we remove 30 papers about Waqf Aswan, which is a mountain in Jordan, articles or geological, so it's a geological description of this Waqf Aswan. It has nothing to do with the financial concept of Waqf. We rely on the following analysis tool: BiblioShiny, VOS Viewer, Excel. So when you look at the results, Zakat, performance analysis, most relevant countries, and most relevant sources. So if you look on the left-hand side, most relevant countries, Malaysia and Indonesia, the top two countries producing the maximum number of literature on the Zakat. Where are those papers published? Journal of Islamic Accounting Business Research. I know many of you are lecturers. If you want to publish, these are the journals you can target. International Journal of Islamic and Middle Eastern Finance and Management. I'm the editor-in-chief of the journal. Our Shajara, International Journal of Innovative Creativity and Change, International Journal of Supply Chain Management, Journal Pen Gurasan, Global Journal Al Takafa, Option Human Social Sciences Reviews, and International Journal of Economic and Financial Issues. Now, who are the most cited sources and authors? The sources coming from JIBR, about 59, Islamic International Journal of Islamic and Ministry of Finance, about 35. If you look at who are the most cited authors, S. Ahmed, Wahid, and so on, I'm also in this list, number 10. Most cited documents, if you want to read some representative papers. So I'm going to share this slides with you guys. So I want you to go and download this paper and read. For example, Scott C. Resistance without protest and without organization, Peace and Opposition, the Islamic Zakat and the Christian Faith in 1987. It was published by Comparative Studies in Society and History. Then you have another paper, Abdul Wahab Rohim Abdul Rahman, a framework to analyze the efficient governance of Zakat. It was published in JIBR 35 times. So these are some of the examples of paper or also benchmark papers. If you want to study in this area, you should read. So what are some of the future direction of research you can do? Like Zakat management, these are the questions that you can address. What does the development of Zakat in the advent of Islam looks like? The success and various factors and effectiveness of Zakat institutions. Construction of a rating index on the perception of parties who deal with Zakat centers. By the way, Baznas has done a wonderful job. They have created an index for the different Zakat organizations so that you can see who is doing a good job and who is doing a poor job. And also at the same time, they offer solution how to improve them. When it comes to Zakat collection, exploring the new sources of Zakat funds with the emergence of new sources of income, reflecting by the use of technology. So on the right, the last column, you see these ideas and questions are coming from those studies and also coming from our own understanding what needs to be done. Now, Zakat distribution, development of a comprehensive performance measurement system of Zakat institutions. Is there an effect on Zakat collection because of the pandemic COVID-19? To what extent is Zakat compliance behavior of Muslims in non-Muslim majority countries? What are the vulnerable groups that have access to Zakat funds? What is the role of Zakat in handling issues raised from COVID-19? Development of Zakat institution. What are the major barriers of Zakat implementation in non-Muslim majority countries? Is there an indirect effect of Zakat in improving quality of life, such as improving happiness, enjoyment, reducing divorce rate, reducing crime rate? The role of Zakat in achieving sustainable development goals. What are the components of platform application needed to improve efficiency of Zakat institution? And what are the standardization accounting treatment for corporate Zakat among corporations? So you can pick any of these research ideas and can elaborate do research, write a thesis, or write a paper. Now comes to WACO. If you look at WACO, again, the two countries which has done the most amount of research are Malaysia and Indonesia. And what are the universities that are mostly involved in it? Of course, International Islamic University Malaysia. Then you have UKM. Is there any universities? Indonesia is one from there. International Islamic University from Pakistan, University of Malawi. So most of these institutions or universities are coming from either Indonesia or Malaysia or Pakistan, mostly from Asian countries. Again, so these are some of the most cited authors. You can go and read their papers to have an initial understanding in this area. Now, the top 10 cited global documents, the Timur Quran, the provision of public goods under Islamic law, origins, impact, and limitations of the Waqf system. You can read Waqf, Perpetual Charity and Poverty Alleviation by Sadek, 2002. You can read Sijaka. He also has done tremendous amount of work of the cash Waqf of Bursa, Journal of Economic and Social History of the Orient. Now, if you come to, we are talking about the Waqf. So this is the most cited documents. And now come some of the questions that you as a young researcher can address or write a paper, write a thesis, and so on. So cash Waqf endowments for sustainable development. So cash Waqf model for poverty alleviation that promotes good governance and identifies key stakeholders. So what is the research gap? The conceptual model needs to be empirically tested for its practical application and generalizability. Integrated cash Waqf microfinance investment model for microenterprise. Practical application of cash Waqf is discussed from the perspective of Sharia scholar. A theoretical model that identifies a new group of use of cash Waqf fund. Empirical evidence on the role of trust in cash Waqf donations. So the cash Waqf implementation procedure could be different in different countries. There is a need to perform comparative analysis of cash Waqf products and implementation strategies in countries with similar and diverse demographics. Empirical results may not be generalizable and require more evidence from different countries. So what are the future research questions? Question number one, if you look at the cash Waqf, what is the most effective mode of cash Waqf based microfinance model for sustainable development? You can read my paper. What is the role of Islamic banks in delivering cash Waqf based Islamic microfinance? How can governments in emerging Muslim economies integrate cash Waqf in achieving social development? What are the Sharia standards with regards to maintaining perpetuity of cash Waqf contribution? What is the proper use of cash Waqf fund? How effective is the integration of takaful and Waqf certificates in cash Waqf model? And what is the role of regulation in strengthening donor trust in Waqf institution? If you look at the implication of Islamic accountability for Waqf, the previous empirical evidence on the perception of accountability among mutawallis emphasize the importance of downward accountability of Waqf management. We can propose a conceptual model of accountability that specifies key stakeholders and their relationship with mutawallis. We can provide a historical overview of the concept of Islamic accountability and that relates to Waqf. So the various regulatory landscape can be provided for developing Islamic social finance to Waqf. So Islamic social finance to Waqf is another major research stream. Develop conceptual framework that focuses on building an Islamic social finance ecosystem where Islamic banks finance Waqf projects. It introduces the trusted perspective of the developed Islamic social bank based on the concept of Waqf. It elaborates on the role of Waqf-based Islamic social finance in mitigating social economic challenges. So what are some of the research questions that we look at? So if you look at the mechanism to discharge Waqf accountability may vary. The current disclosure practice of Waqf institution have not yet been extensively studied. So what you can do, what type of reporting standard adopted by Waqf institutions and why? This is some of the research question. How are the most appropriate mechanism for mutualis to discharge downward? How does the accountability relationship affect Waqf management? What are the key dimensions of Waqf accountability? So Islamic accountability is a complex issue. There's a need to discuss the accountability relationship among stakeholders from a Sharia perspective to develop standard practices for Waqf institutions. Now, Islamic ecosystem is an emerging issue and requires participation from various Islamic institutions, including Zakat, Waqf, Islamic microfinance, Islamic banks, crowdfunding, fintech platform. While past papers provide the conceptual framework on the role of such institutions in Islamic ecosystem, we are yet to find evidence on the ability or willingness of these institutions toward participating in such an ecosystem. So, what are the questions that you can answer? What type of regulatory environment is best suited for Waqf institutions? How do various stakeholders view the role of Islamic banks in financing Waqf projects? What are the challenges of building an ecosystem that integrates different types of Islamic institutions? What are the Sharia considerations for the management, investment, and Waqf funds in Islamic Social Bank? And finally, the majority of studies have presented conceptual framework to explore the importance of Waqf based on Islamic social finance in socio-economic development. However, we find a limited number of studies concentrating on the importance of digitalization of reviving Waqf as an Islamic social finance platform. So the question that you can answer, there's a paper by Abdul, he's an Indonesian scholar, to what extent digitalization in the form of fintech enhances the role of Waqf funds in mitigating social economic challenges. Now, the good governance for Islamic endowment discuss the role of Islamic governance in the reinforcement of Waqf reporting, role of internal control as a measure of good governance for Waqf institutions. It provides a comparative overview of Waqf governance. A conceptual Waqf governance model is introduced, focusing on board member attributes. It identifies the best Sharia governance practices for Waqf institutions. So we find discussion on governance and its role in reporting. However, Waqf institutions, most of the emerging Muslim economies, are not required to share their financial report with the general public. In such a situation, future research can focus on the factors that determine the extent of voluntary Waqf reporting, and also there's a need to develop a good governance framework for the Waqf institutions. Fortunately, AFI has come up with a governance mechanism, so does the Indonesian government. So, what are the research questions? What are the determinants of Waqf reporting practice? What is the most effective internal control approach for Waqf management? To what extent good governance affect the performance of Waqf institutions? And what is the role of board for the efficient Waqf management? And what are the Sharia standard of good governance for Waqf institutions? Then another Islamic financial tool could be takaful. So again, if you look at the country, Malaysia is the largest country which has done the maximum number of research work. The influential authors, here you have the Mike Adams, you have Asmak Abdul Rahman, she comes from University of Malaya, you have Haitham Siela, you have Hania Masood, Nader Naifer. So these are the people who have done a lot of work in Islamic insurance. So these
Excuse me,
are,
Sarah.
yes.
I'm sorry, I want to remind you that your time is 5 minutes left.
Okay, so these are some of the influential documents you can read. And what are some of the research questions? So takaful growth, overview and models. You have the governance mechanism, takaful market. So these are some of the research questions. What are the similar differences in interpreting Sharia laws with respect to different schools of thought and jurisdictions? Then I'm just reading one, governance mechanism, takaful market. Does the SSCB improve the efficient takaful forms as compared to conventional insurance? You can also have the takaful product and service and customer perception. Most studies on demand for takaful products and determinants are restricted to country or a city in a specific country, but future studies are required with large samples investigating cross-country variations in demand for takaful products and services. And finally, Islamic microfinance. Again, Malaysia and Indonesia are the top two countries which has done the maximum number of research in these areas. On the right-hand side, you have the journals which have published research in this area. Again, you're the most cited authors. Abdul Ghaffar Ismail, a Malaysian professor, has done the most amount. I have few papers as well in this area. So this is the most cited documents. I would ask you if you want to do Islamic microfinance research, this is you really need to study as a starting point, then you develop your hypothesis and so on. And what are the research stream? Research stream microfinance, principal, purpose, and problem. Research stream 2, Islamic microfinance for sustainable development. Research stream 3, Islamic microfinance for female empowerment. And the research stream 4, the role of the banking sector in operationalizing. And that's all, my dear friends. This is the end of my presentation. So I'm ready to take any question that you may have. Hello.
All right, sir. We can move to the question and answer session. For the participant who have question, you can raise your hand or maybe put your question in the chat box. Because the time limit, we will open the question and answer session only
Excuse, I
for
want to
1
remind
minute.
you that okay, it's a note from you, so I didn't get any question in the chat box.
Yes.
You can ask question directly.
Yes, sir.
Since everyone understood what I said. Huh?
Yeah,
So
I
all of
think
you understood everything that I said? Nobody's asking any question. Or you are shy. Don't be shy. By the way, Nabila, the participants are mostly lecturers or from the industry. What type of participants do we have here?
most of them is accounting students, sir.
The accounting students. So do they have to
Yes.
write a research paper or anything like that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so maybe you can have some take-home message from my presentation, the bibliometry study, and I'll share my slides so that you can read it and get something out of it, because otherwise my lecture and time will be in vain. I want you to learn something, and at the same time I want to learn something from you as well. So let me ask one of you, say something, please.
In the chat box, they say everything is clear and they have no questions, sir.
Yeah, but there is only one person,
Yes.
and I believe that person is Al-Bakari from probably Palestine, right?
Yes, sir.
So you have some students from Palestine joining here, right?
Yes,
Al-Quds
sir.
or oh, great, excellent.
All right, sir. Maybe we can move to the next session.
Sure.
Okay, thank you for Professor Dr. Muhammad Kabir Hasan for the attractive material. Hopefully, it can help the audience to have a better understanding of the nature and the role of Islamic commercial and social finance. Now we are turning to the last agenda, which is closing. As the master of ceremony, I do apologize for any mistakes during this event. Finally, I say thank you. Before leaving this event, kindly please everyone turning on your camera because you want to take a picture. And also, don't forget to rename your name to your full name since it will be used in the certificate and the attendance. Okay, maybe we can start if you ready. 1, 2, 3. Once more. 1, 2, 3. And then once again. 1, 2, 3. Thank you for joining this class and see you on the next class. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Walaikum salam. Have a good night, everyone. Well, it's very late night, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sir.
Assalamu alaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And we